Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. Today we're back with the Empire, going to be taking on the Proud Dawi, hence the meme rockets here. This is actually the Sunmaker, the Hellstorm rocket battery. My army is going to be led by Balthazar Gelt. In terms of the rest of the army, we've also got a great cannon front line of swordsmen backed up by 4 handgunners. Four handgunners. We've also got the Sterling's Revenge, Free Company Militia, Regiment of Renown, 3 units of Reichsguard. One of them is the Zintler's Reichsguard, Vanguard deployed way up here. And that's it for my build. For my opponent, you can see he's got Rune Lord here, some Longbeards with Grey Weapons. Looks like he didn't quite finish deploying them, unfortunately, but got some Dwarf Warriors here, or maybe he just forgot. It's totally possible as well. Some more Longbeards with Grey Weapons, some Thunderers. He's got 2 Organ Guns, Grumbling Guard, and 2 Giant Slayers. So as you can see, he's using this terrain here for a bit of an advantage, kind of forming up in a nice Dawi geometry here. And yeah, for those of you who don't know, the rockets got a buff in the latest patch, so they do pretty much pure AP damage now. So if we watch as this volley gets unleashed here, just watch the amount of damage that even like a single rocket making contact does. You see how only 1 rocket made contact there, but it still ended up doing a ton of damage. So as the volleys start to roll in here, and especially with the Sunmaker because it's more accurate, has a much faster refire rate, being that it's a Regiment of Renown. It looks like a bit of a misfire there, but yeah, it can do an absurd amount of damage. So since my artillery outranges his pretty significantly, I mean, organ guns, they have 300 range, obviously this great cannon 450, and the rocket battery as well 480, so quite long range on those pieces. We're going to outrange these organ guns significantly. The cannon is here to be a counter artillery battery, and then obviously the rockets are there to deal with the Dawi infantry. You can see my opponent's going to be moving up, realizing that he doesn't have range, and I can sit back and use my artillery to fire on him. And this is one thing that a lot of dwarf players, if you can catch them off guard with an artillery advantage, like if you hold an artillery advantage against the dwarves, you're almost always going to be in a favorable situation, because you can make them kind of advance into the hot gates, as it were, you know, really just force them into an unfavorable situation. So here you can see these Dawi marching forward. They are taking some losses, and each one of those rocket volleys is going to be absolutely devastating. On this one, they started firing a volley right as I issued an attack order, so half the volley is actually going to go over here to this side and do a ton of damage to these other Thunderers over here. I figured we need to get rid of these Thunderers here, get rid of my opponent's ranged units as much as possible so that he's forced to come into melee, and I can kind of dictate the engagements from there. But yeah, organ gun's still not in range, and that's honestly the biggest weakness of the organ gun, is it does have pretty short range. Otherwise, it's a pretty solid pick, but I would definitely recommend you mix 1 organ gun with 1 cannon, because the cannon has much longer range. You could sit back, kind of counter artillery fire, although this Sunmaker, because it can empty out its ammo so quickly, is going to be a danger no matter what. So yeah, you can see it's already racked up 74 kills. A lot of these Dawi infantry units suffering pretty badly here. And at this point, there's just a few more volleys left to come in and deal some just absurd damage here. You can see these Giant Slayers. Definitely, there's going to be a reckoning for the Empire at some point. But yeah, Balthazar Gelt just kind of cackling in the back. Happy to let the range units do the work here. And yeah, at this point, they're going to come in range of the handgunners, and I assume the organ guns are just about in range. See, they're just barely getting in range now of my, or actually well in range of my front line. So interesting that my opponent's not opening fire quite yet, but you can see the overwhelming firepower of the Empire starting to tip the balance power, and very soon my opponent is going to admit defeat. So we'll just soak up some more cinematic action of these Dawi getting grudged, as it were, or I guess the Empire making the grudges against the Dawi. But yeah. Oh man, those rockets, beautiful, beautiful thing. And the Sunmaker may even be a good pick in other infantry heavy matchups. I haven't really tried it too much against, say, like the Skaven or the Dark Elves, perhaps, might be a good pick there. You know, it's an interesting artillery piece, and I definitely like the changes that have been made. It seems like it's a lot better. That combined with the handgunner changes make this matchup, I think, a little bit more doable for the Empire. I do still think it's in the favor of the Dwarves somewhat, but a great cannon doing some nice work there. Obviously, my opponent admitting defeat, having had to advance in those hot gates. He lost his Thunderers. The Longbeards were not in a real great situation either, so yeah, very fun battle. Let's move on to another battle with a similar idea, except this time we're going to be taking Bretonnia. And we do indeed have 4 trebuchets, so all the trebuchet memes are incoming, and what a beautiful piece of engineering, truly. The best catapult, no doubt, in the game. We've also got a Prophetess, Lore of Life, just for some healing. We've got these guys here, who I haven't brought in quite a while, but decided to try them out against the Dwarves. They do heavy AP damage, of course, the Royal Hippogriff Knights. They also cause fear and terror. They have 20% physical resistance, heavy weapon damage, good charge bonus, all that jazz. So we'll see how they do here. And yeah, you can see already the trebuchets popping off shots. We're going to be targeting high-value infantry here. Warriors of Dragonfire Pass. There's Longbeards with great weapons. We've got the, where are they? Norgrimlings, Ironbreakers around here somewhere as well. So yeah, going to be getting some good value there. We've also got some peasant mobs, men-at-arms with shields, a Grail Relic to support leadership. We've also got some questing knights, 3 units of them. One of them is the Regiment of Renown, Companions of Quenelle. Excellent pick in this matchup. And yeah, that's pretty much it for myself. For my opponent, he's got a couple of gyrocopters. Belagar Ironhammer going to be leading the way with his 2 ethereal thanes. And unfortunately, Bretonnia can bring a lot of magic damage to the table, which can be a big danger to these guys. So I would definitely recommend against bringing them versus Bretonnia. But I didn't happen to bring any magic damage. I have no Grail Knights or anything like that, so yeah, going to be a little bit rough there in that respect. But yeah, you can see those Longbeards just taking an absolute shellacking from those field trebuchets. And you know, at this point, there's a couple of options my opponent has. He can either advance into the Hawk Gates, and he could potentially get surrounded here and you know, face some rough situations, but that's going to be preferable to doing what he's doing here, which is trying to sit back and use the forest for cover. I'm going to bring my main infantry force forward to act as spotters, so that I can see these guys in the woods here, and I'm pretty confident that my trebuchet can fire through the woods there, and won't have too much issues in that way. You can see the Royal Hippogriff Knights just kind of chasing around these gyros, not allowing them to sit and fire anything high value, like those field trebuchet crews, for example. And yeah, at this point, the dwarf player just going to be kind of sitting back here. And again, this we were kind of chatting in the game, and he said that this was, he felt, the best thing for him to do. I definitely would recommend in this situation, you want to advance and try and take out this infantry corps if possible, or at the very least get to these field trebuchets before they use up all their ammo, because if you advance, you can at least get to them. Granted, they'll do a lot of damage on the approach, but since my opponent doesn't have any counter artillery of his own, doesn't have any cannons or anything like that, he basically is faced with those 2 choices: either try and weather the storm, or else advance into the Hawk Gates. And at this point, you can see the Royal Hippogriff Knight's going to get a hold of these gyros, where we pop a regrowth on them since they're being shot at a bit by these rangers and other units in this pocket. The Prophetess herself also catching some gyros here, so we're able to deal with one of my opponent's kind of mobility forces here. And yeah, we'll just hook up some cinematic action as I do get some spotting of these units in the front line. And you can see here, these trees will offer a little bit of protection. They may block a shot or 2, but they're not going to block the vast majority of the shots, and it's going to be a really rough situation for these Warriors of Dragonfire Pass. Of course, I say that, and every single shot proceeds to miss, but yeah. We had maybe 1 make contact there, but over the course of a sustained battle, especially if you just sit back and let them fire, they will definitely do a lot of damage. Trebuchets aren't the most accurate, so if you were to advance on them, try and take them out that way, it wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing. You can see I'm just kind of not really wanting to commit to a melee engagement, mostly just keeping my infantry force around here for spotting. We're going to come in with the Royal Hippogriff Knights and finish off the 2nd unit of gyrocopters here. You can see the Prophetess also coming in here. She is taking some shots, which is a smart play by my opponent. She is a low armor unit, and obviously as my lord, very important, and my healer. So yeah, at this point, she probably, my opponent that is, probably wants to focus fire with the Rangers on the Prophetess. But we're able to finish off all 3 gyros. They all crash and burn there. And my opponent's going to start shooting these Royal Hippogriff Knights, who have already picked up an XP Chevron. But at this point, I've got my sights set on these Norgrimlings Ironbreakers, and we'll watch as the overwhelming just trebuchet fire comes in here. smashes them out a bit, does a ton of damage, and it's such a high value infantry like this. We're generating some really nice value so far. So we'll fast forward a little bit through this, as it's mostly just me throwing rocks at my opponent with trebuchets. So yeah, you can see we're kind of picking and choosing each target, just doing a ton of damage to each one individually. And I decided to come down here with these Royal Hippogriff Knights and do a bit of damage to the Rangers and melee. I also dropped the bombardment. For those of you who don't know, that big rock bombardment is from the Prophetess. It's an item she can take. It's this one here, the Assault of Stone, fittingly called. But yeah, at this point, it's just going to be mostly firing the trebuchets. And yeah, honestly, trebuchets, you know, they did get an accuracy buff in the last patch. They're a bit better, but they're still not amazing. And because Bretonnia has relatively limited artillery options, you know, you really don't have like a bolt thrower or any kind of anti-large type artillery, which is pretty rough, can potentially be rough in certain matchups. But yeah, Royal Hippogriff Knights coming in here and forcing a nice blob for the other knights and such to come in and finish things off here. So you can see the Companions of Cornell going to get a beautiful lance charge in here. Some awesome visuals as these guys get in here and start to chop these Dawi up. And yeah, again, if you're a Dawi player, you have to keep in mind that people can pull stuff like this and really go heavy on the counter artillery. And if they do, you could potentially face some issues. You can see all these Longbeards and such getting routed off. Combined might of the Questing Knights, and of course these Royal Hippogriff Knights still in there as well. So yeah, at this point, we're forcing up some other blobs here. Grumbling Guard fighting some peasant mobs, and we're going to target them with the Trebuchet next. And of course, if some of those Trebuchet rocks hit the peasants, that's totally fine. I mean, they are just peasants after all. I mean, look at these filthy faces. Oh, speaking of faces, right to the dome. Anyway, yeah, you can see the bounce power starting to turn. We're just going to continue to kind of ping-pong around with these Questing Knights, and honestly, the Companions of Cornell, not too dangerous to leave in melee, as they do have a little bit more armor, I believe. Let's see, they have 80, and the regular Questing Knights, oh, no, they also have 80, interesting. They have helmets, whereas the regular Questing Knights do not wear helmets, so you would think they'd have a bit more armor. But anyway, they do have the physical resistance and better combat stats. They're a bit tankier. Not too bad to leave them in melee like that. But yeah, the rest of the Questing Knights just kind of ping-ponging around. And at this point, we'll fast forward even more, as it's pretty much just the Ethereal Thanes and the Rune Lord at this point. Most of the Dawi infantry and army has been routed off. And yeah, it's pretty much just the heroic units at this point. So, well played to both my opponents. Hope you guys enjoyed watching those. I know it's not like the most high-level gameplay per se, but I thought I'd show off some of the changes to the human artillery. In particular, those are the two that I think got the most changes out of the Empire and Bretonnia. The Trebuchet, of course, the only the only artillery for Bretonnia. Got some buffs, which is always nice. I haven't used them too much in other matchups, but they seem like they could potentially be better. They certainly do seem more accurate. But well played to my opponent. In terms of the army breakdown there, obviously the Trebuchet is doing most of the work, and the Questing Knights also doing some really nice work as well. 3 XP chevrons on the Royal Hippogriff Knights. Quite like them in this, in this matchup. I'll have to play around with them in other matchups to see if they're cost effective. The Prophetess Lore of Life is also another lore that I'm starting to like more and more, just because she's super cheap. She's significantly cheaper than the Fey Enchantress, so you get a healer that's also your lord for much cheaper, and that allows you to go wider with your army, which is good in certain circumstances. I don't know that she's necessarily the best in every matchup, but I have been playing around with her a bit, and she does seem, at least the Lore of Life Prophetess, does seem to be a pretty decent pick in certain situations. So yeah, definitely human artillery looking better. The trebuchets and the Hellstorm rocket batteries both. The Hellblaster volley gun as well is pretty decent now. It still has relatively short range, kind of has the same issue as the organ gun, but I do believe it got a cost reduction. Empire Great Cannons are still not amazing. They're a bit better, but I still feel that they don't have enough. They don't have a high enough refire rate. They're not accurate enough compared to something like a bolt thrower for around the same cost. Hammer of Witches, on the other hand, can be very cost effective in the right situation, but overall I feel that the Empire and Bretonnia definitely got some buffs to their artillery. Whether that necessarily brings them out of some of the lower tiers remains to be seen. I definitely think the Empire is quite a bit better. The fix to handgunners made them a much more viable faction in a multitude of matchups, and this is one matchup where that definitely shows. Bretonnia, I don't know, I still think they might be in the bottom tier just because they're so one-track. I'll still have to do some experimenting to see if the Royal Hippogriff Knights or the Royal Pegasus Knights are worthwhile in any matchups, but from my experience, they're good, don't get me wrong. And I mean, the spread between like them and, say, the Dark Elves or Chaos, who I think are probably the the #1 factions right now. It's not that much. Bretonnia definitely has a tough time against Chaos, but the Dark Elves is a pretty doable matchup just because the Dark Elves aren't great against cavalry, and hey, Bretonia's got great cavalry. But anyway, I'm rambling a bit now, so hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thank you once again for watching, and we'll see you next time.